So one of the hardest things of weight loss is when you get stuck, you just hit that plateau. Things aren't going the way that you want. You're feeling like you're putting in all the work. You're training hard. You're eating to fill the needs of your body, but not overeating. You feel like you're in a caloric deficit, and yet nothing is happening. Well, what is a plateau? How do you know when you need to adjust to get out of a plateau? And what even needs to happen? These are kind of the common questions, and the knowledge that most people get, the things that they get told all the time is, well, you need to move more and eat less. Yeah, there's some truth to that. But at the same time, it's probably not the real solution. Where do we need to move more? In what capacity? And where do we need to eat less? In what capacity, right? And so it's all a lot of it depends. And we're going to get to that. We're not actually going to get to most of that in today's show. Today, we're really going to be looking at the 4 key questions that you need to ask yourself when you feel like you're stuck or at a plateau, right? These are the 4 questions that you need to ask and evaluate. You need to analyze where you're at before we even start making these adjustments. Because so often, we're not analyzing quite right. If you're not assessing, you're guessing, right? And we know this from a physical standpoint, but it applies to our nutrition as well. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. These 4 questions are going to help guide you. So as always, it's Joseph Hawthorne, Truth Transformation Podcast. And I am excited you're here. I do have one request before we get rocking and rolling on these questions. If you're enjoying the show and you're getting value out of it, it would mean a lot to me if you would hit that review button. 5 stars is always awesome, but whatever you feel compelled to give. But it just makes sure that this show actually continues to grow to the right people. Someone else who is struggling with stress eating and wanting to understand this journey, wanting to get valuable content that's at the right way and speaking the truth about nutrition, right? If I don't know something, I will gladly tell you I don't know. And then I will go to town researching it, reaching out to the right people and getting you that information. So as always, submit any of your questions, joseph@truthtransformation.com. But if you can, a review would mean a lot. I read all of them. And they do mean a lot to me. So without further ado, let's get into today's show. The 4 questions to ask when stuck at a weight loss plateau. All right, so question number 1 is, what did my last 30 days of nutrition look like? Seriously, what did the last 30 days of your nutrition actually look like? Because so often we'll want to just think of the last few days, the last week, and that's all we'll be able to remember. Like, we just are not capable of remembering very much. And from that perspective, we'll be like, yeah, I had a really good week. Why am I not losing weight faster? Why am I stuck at a plateau? I don't understand. And it's really hard for us to remember all the way back 4 weeks ago to that first week of the month where we were really stressed out. So our stress caused us to not get great sleep. And then we were really fatigued. So actually our hunger went up. We actually didn't eat that great. We had a few more glasses of wine, definitely more sweets than we had expected. And we only got 2 training sessions instead of our normal 4. But we've forgotten about that. We've forgotten about the fact that we actually went up 3 pounds by the end of that week. We equated it to water weight because we saw a pound of it go down within the first couple of days. And we are like, okay. And then we lost that other 2. And then we're on week 4. We did really well this last week. So why didn't the weight go down? We have to look back across the whole picture. Actually, a new client that I'm working with, this was our first month. We're dealing with stress eating patterns, emotional eating, a lot of stuff going on at work. And that's the way that she's used as a coping mechanism for 40 plus years. And it's going to take some time. And we've already had huge breakthroughs and insights into why what is happening, right? These programmed habits. We have to recognize the emotion that is coming and when that emotion is being brought on to be able to even stop it before it's happening. But this is one of the things you need to ask yourself as to why you're at a plateau. It may not be that you actually need to move more. It may be that you do need to move more. Maybe when you're really stressed out, you find yourself just chilling with Netflix and not actually moving, going on walks and stuff like that. So you actually have to have the ability to look all the way back and get real with yourself, which is why having an ability to track all of these different things is so incredibly important, right? And so if you have a way to see what your nutrition has been, even if it's tracking calories, tracking macros, tracking points, if you use one of those types of systems, even though I do not fully agree with the methodology behind them, that's for another talk, but or tracking your compliance, what you would deem as a meal that is compliant towards your goal, right? And you're looking at the meal as a whole. But if you don't have one of these things in place, how will you know? And so that's what I think is so essential. People say, like, I want to do intuitive eating. And I'm all for intuitive eating. But here's what I've found, bringing it back to the client that I just started working with, who is dealing with stress and emotional eating and has these ties towards food as a mechanism of feeling safe. It's the thing that she's been able to depend on. It makes her feel good. It takes away the loneliness. When she is stressed out, it has been there for her. There are all of these bonds. I'm not a psychologist. I do not pretend to be. I do not try to be. We just work to identify where these things are coming up, what has been the habit, where she is inserting food for that, and what she could do instead. We're working on the habits of this. We're working on the awareness of what is happening. We're working on the awareness of actually being able to pull back and look at the entire 30 days. So we're not saying, why am I stuck? I should be here. I should be here. I should be here. I should be here. And you're just shitting all over yourself. It's not really true. And so that before you do intuitive eating, there's this journey of understanding the self, the awareness of what is happening in these patterns, and just developing a healthy relationship with food, building the big blocks of food, understanding what fuels you, how to eat the majority of your food from non-processed, right? Meats, vegetables, and these types of wonderful things first, building these big blocks. Then we're going to go into some calorie counting and macros. Why? Why? Because it's going to give her the education, and it's going to give her an ability to then be able to break down and be like, oh, this is what this has. This is what I can have, and it makes me feel good. This is what actually makes me feel fueled and gives me energy. And when I have this much, it's not there. Oh, wait, I didn't realize that this was packed with this much sugar or this many calories, and then I don't feel well. So we can bring in cause and effect and correlation in this phase 2. In phase 3, that's where you can go into intuitive eating. That's where you start to recognize, like, I already know this is what this is going to do for my body. I already know what this is going to be. I already know, my body already knows what it needs. You can't start off with intuitive eating. That's the problem with this big intuitive eating phase that is happening right now. You're not in tune with your body. I can't tell you how many people I say, like, do you know what 100% of your, what 100% feels like for fullness? Do you know what 80% feels like? We just need to eat in a caloric deficit to lose weight. It pretty much is as simple as that. Some other things, but that's the majority of it. You have to be in a caloric deficit to lose weight. So can you eat to 80% full? And most people aren't even anywhere near aware. And maybe that's you right now as you're listening. You're going, I honestly wouldn't know what 80% feels like. How would I know? How could I even tell? And we've got some ways that we can track this where we're utilizing a certain time frame. It takes your stomach about 20 to 30 minutes to even realize that it is full. So you can't be eating too fast. Problem number 1. You need time to actually recognize if you are full or not. You need to understand for a long time how much you are eating to know if that's going to make you full or not. I know that if I eat right around 700 calories in a meal, in a sitting, I'm going to feel about 80% full. That's me. I can say I'm at a place where I'm an intuitive eater because I have done the other stages first, but it has taken time to jump into intuitive eating and say, just trust your body. Your body knows. That's like this whole thing of like relying on the last week of this 30 days and not looking at the full scope. We need to look at these other full scopes. We need to understand from an educational standpoint, calories and macros. And before that, we even need to understand our behaviors tied to the roots of our emotions. That is why we eat. This is why I use the system that I do. This is why it works extremely well. This is why people are able to get to the truth of why they're at where they're at and completely transform. Truth of transformation, my friends. So question number 1, before you go into any of those things, is just to really look at everything. Recognize that consistency is king. So look back at these last 30 days. Where have you had extras? Because this is probably where there's the reason you're at a plateau. Probably some extra dressings here on the side there. Probably, oh, you know what? I had the salad. That your mind remembers the salad, but your mind doesn't remember that it was from the Cheesecake Factory and it actually had 1,400 calories. And if we figured out you're only in phase 1 with this, still dealing with the emotional component, because you also had the cheesecake just because it was an impulse when you didn't actually need it, which had 1,200 calories. And if we broke down where you should be, it was probably 1,700 calories for the day. And you just had more in that one meal than you needed for the entire day. And this is common. But we think, oh, it's just one meal. It's not that bad. And it's not. I totally understand. But we did that twice in a week, and we're actually in a surplus. We're actually having more calories to actually cause us to gain weight than it was to lose weight. And so we have to first understand our emotional components to order this. Second, we have to be able to understand what the calorie count is, what we need, how it's fueling us, where it's coming from. Is it coming from fat? Is it coming from carbs? Do we need to adjust one? Do we need to adjust both? So there's a lot of education that needs to happen during this phase. So right now, I just need you to look back at the last 30 days and say, where am I at? What have I actually been having? And you look and you're like, my 3-year-old son is always running around and I ate the rest of his toast here. No big deal. Completely forgot about it. Right. Then I ate the rest of his chicken nuggets here. No big deal. Completely forgot about it. And then when we actually add it all up, it's 300 calories for the day. 300 calories for the day times 7 days. We're talking a decent amount of calories here, 2,100 calories, right? And so if we know we need to be in a 3,500 calorie deficit to lose a pound, we're not even near that now when we just added 2,100 calories back in, just unconsciously eating. And then we had the whole thing of ice cream instead of actually measuring it out. So this is question number one, is actually just ask yourself, what have my last 30 days actually look like? Because it's probably going to give you all the insights that you actually need in order to recognize that you're not at a plateau. You're just sneaking in more calories, unfortunately, than you actually need to lose weight, to continue on this journey. And so that's why I asked a little bit within there. But question number two is, how are you tracking? How are you tracking and measuring your food so that you're aware of this? No, you do not need to do this forever, but there needs to be some form of metric. For most of my clients, it's compliance. We've devised a meal system, right? Where protein is the main source, veggies, second main source, or fruit, right? There's a swap and there's a mechanism to that. We're building out their meals and then we're working in starchy carbs, breads, rice, pasta, grains, oats, all the good stuff 3 times a day, 3 servings a day. And then we're monitoring amounts of fats that we're having. And because of that, we're in a caloric deficit and it's working. And we're considering that to be a compliant or non-compliant meal. And we're aiming for a certain percentage. Sounds complicated, but I promise it's not, because it's all done on a worksheet for them. They literally just mark yes or no. And it's actually really, really simple. But another way would be using something like MyFitnessPal to track your calories and your macros. But when you do it, you've got to track all of it. You got to look at that 30 days. Because if you're not assessing, you're guessing. So the fact that you're like, oh, you hear my dog snoring in the background? I don't know if you can hear that. He's laying next to me snoring. So I apologize if you hear that. Unless you love dogs, then you're probably totally okay with this. But you've got to have a way to track, my friends. There has to be something. Otherwise, you're literally just stabbing in the dark. You're just guessing on what it is. And as you know, that hardly works with pretty much anything. The last thing you would want is your mechanic to just go guessing. Like, there's a sound. Maybe it's the brakes. And you're going, the sound's coming from the engine, dude. Let's not worry about my brakes in the back of the car when it's my engine, right? Question number 3 for you. How are your biometrics? So biometrics, something I have all my clients track. And it's probably the most insightful thing that I've included in the last 8 months of doing this with nutrition clients. We track sleep, we track stress, track motivation, track hydration. Now, there's several other things that I like to track with certain key clients, right? Including alcohol, including fatigue, lots of different things. But these are my main 4. Where's your sleep? How's your stress? What's your motivation? How's your hydration? If we can monitor these 4 things, we can actually tie it back into phase 1, where we are eliminating stress eating, emotional eating, food sabotage, which is just really like your ego trying to fight to hold on to the identity that it has, because it doesn't want to give that up. It doesn't want to lose who it was, because it's comfortable there, my friends. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but ultimately, like, your body is just trying to stay where it was because it was comfortable there. It was comfortable there because that's how your friends eat. That's how your spouse eats. And so to shift that is to bring potential damage to that ego itself. Oh, well, if you get better and healthier, then no one's going to want to hang out with you. No one's going to want to go, invite you to the bar, and you're going to end up all alone. You're going to end up completely alone because you got healthy. So let's just eat more. This will make you feel better in this moment. Let's exchange that feeling that you really want for later on, when you're able to move well, play well with your kids, and feel confident in that swimsuit or that suit or whatever it may be. Let's exchange that feeling for just feeling good right now. Because right now, you just want some sugar. You're stressed out. You're sleep deprived. And that's why we need to track sleep, stress, motivation, hydration. Because sleep and stress, although you technically will not gain fat because of them, right? I mean, there's some interesting studies on both sides, but we know that with a lack of sleep and with high stress, we're going to consistently produce cortisol. Cortisol is good in the short term, right? It's meant fight or flight. It's good. It's necessary. It helps you when you're in the gym, when you need to lift some weights and you get fired up and get amped up and just go and release. But then it needs to go away. And when it's not, when it's a chronic drip. And of course, when you're sleep deprived, fatigued, and all that, it's going to turn into a lot. Cortisol within the system blunts inflammation, right? And then increases inflammation when it's constantly in the system. So it's going to then, therefore, make you hold on to water weight. So you're not going to see the scale move, but mostly it's going to be from water weight. But we need to see these things to know that, do we really need to do a hard training session when you're really sleep deprived and your stress is really through the roof? Or do we just need to do some light activity to decrease that stress, to hopefully put yourself into a state where then you can sleep better, get some melatonin drip because you've de-stressed, you've gotten some serotonin going, you've gotten a little bit of dopamine going because you hit that win, and put yourself in that position and state. And that's why having these metrics, and more importantly, having a coach, which as you need, happy to help. This is what we do. And it's as simple as like sending me a message, joseph@truthoftransformation.com, or hitting me up on any of the social media aspects, set up a conversation, see if it's a good fit for you. But sleep and stress need to be tracked because you need to know when to pull back. Because if you went and tried to train really hard on those circumstances, you're going to be overly sore because your body's already producing too much cortisol and you're going to not be able to blunt that inflammation. You're just going to create more. You're not going to be able to recover well, and it's going to make your sleep worse. And then you're probably going to train less, and you're going to want to sabotage because you're cranky, because you don't feel good. You're going to want to eat a lot, right? So then your motivation is going to tank. And then the last thing is hydration. 66%, that's the last study that I saw, 66% of Americans are in a dehydrated state at all times. I've heard upwards of 75%. I got my water bottle right next to me. So are you drinking half your body weight in ounces? That should be a good place to start, right? Typical is 1 gallon. You're drinking a gallon a day, right? Mostly from water. If you're having other beverages to do it, I'm okay with some of that too. But this is why this is important. So if you're really at a plateau, ask yourself, well, where has my sleep been? Where has my stress been? Where's my motivation been? Has my training matched that? And where's my hydration been? So before you start going and changing up your calories and your macros and, trying to cut off your reset meals and not eat out ever, right? Look at the entire picture, that entire 30 days and go, oh, actually, it was just coming from overdoing this, this, and this. Cool. Now you have a real scope. You weren't really in a plateau. Problem number 1 solved, and let's just go from there. After that, you can ask yourself, well, how are you tracking? How am I tracking all this? I haven't been, is probably the main thing, right? Maybe a coach, maybe having the right system is there, happy to help. Or it's just simply setting up something for yourself, something to track, someone to hold you accountable, whether it's a friend, a spouse, or somebody that you know that's going to have your best interest and not just let you slide. And then it's looking at these biometrics. Which one is an issue? Is it sleep? Is it stress? Is it motivation? Is it hydration? One of those things could be keeping you stuck at a plateau. And then it brings me to the last question. How's your activity changed? So often when we are eating in a caloric deficit, so say you are doing all these things right, nutrition's on point, right? Maybe you're only eating 1,200 calories. People always say, like, I don't understand, I can't cut any lower. They say starvation mode is not really a thing, and so therefore I should be losing weight. Yes, they are right. It's not a thing, right? Auschwitz is what it was. The reality of kids in Africa who are truly starving is what it is, right? And man, deep empathy. Those topics just, they eat away at my soul. So, when we look at, if you're not getting enough food, you're not getting enough calories, you will lose weight. It's inevitable. So you're not under eating and gaining weight, my friend. There's something there. Either your metrics aren't right, you're not tracking right, you're having these extras, you're not aware of things that are coming in from beverages or something like that. But what happens quite often as you're in a caloric deficit and you're not eating as much, your activity goes down. And it may not be that your training goes down, but it could be that your intensity in your training goes down. Because you don't have as many calories going in your system, you're kind of going half of what you used to do when you had more calories in your system. It could also be all of your NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I know when I was on a pretty hard cut getting ready for a photo shoot, I found myself just completely slouched over, less arm movements, less leg movements. There's even been videos where they study like extreme elite bodybuilders, and towards the end, when they're in that state, last few weeks, they blink way less. They hardly move their face when they're talking on video camera. The movements that are burning calories just aren't happening to the same degree. So are you taking the stairs as much? Are you parking as far away? Are you walking as much? Are you getting out and playing with your kids as much? Are you just sitting and stuff? Has that changed because your intake has changed? And so therefore you're actually just creating a balance. And so we just need to get our daily movement up a little bit. Now, there is a point of no return. You don't need to do 20 to 30,000 steps a day, but there needs to be some daily movement. We need to maintain what we have been doing and try and do everything we possibly can to preserve as much muscle mass as possible during a cut, during any kind of removal of calories to achieve a new lower body weight. That is your main goal with strength training, is to preserve the muscle that you possibly have and preserve your strength so that you can recover well from all of this as you then may be able to start putting some calories back in after you reach your goal. So those are the 4 questions I want you to actually ask yourself. Time to get real with yourself, right? Is it really a plateau? If you've been doing all of these things, let's reverse engineer it. Your activity hasn't changed. Still training, still with the same intensity, right? You're still providing that. Your sleep is actually pretty good. Stress is not too bad. You got it in control. At least you meditate or do something to handle it. Motivation staying high. Your hydration is actually really good. All right, cool. You're tracking everything. So you know that everything is actually there and it's legit within where you need it to be, and you're still not seeing anything, then it is time to adjust. And that's after 2 weeks. I would give yourself, if it's after 1 week, I still don't think it's enough time. It's enough time to see if the body can just have this whoosh effect. It is a real thing that has happened. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it happen where it's like nothing for the first 3 weeks, and then whoosh, 3 pounds. Like, what just happened, right? And then we're just rolling 1 pound, 2 pounds, 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds each week. It's fascinating. And then it'll happen again. And that's because there's set points and settling points. That's for another conversation, but definitely go into that later. But I need you to ask yourself these 4 questions and see. And if you truly are doing all these things and then you've been doing them for 2 weeks and you still don't see it, then it is time to make an adjustment. And that's where happy to help. It could be a recomp of your macros, your proteins, carbs, and fats, or it could be removing some of your calories, or it could be increasing some of your activity. An individual basis, it's always an it depends. So I'm sorry that it's an it depends on podcast for you here, but hopefully that gives you some insight into exactly where you're at and what you need to focus on and where you need to make some adjustments and get real with yourself. So that's part of the journey, my friends. That is the truth of transformation, right? Is that you're being truthful with yourself the entire way, no hiding. And I think that's when it ends up happening, a lot of this. And we try and blame plateau. We try and blame metabolism, anything, instead of accepting that responsibility, that ownership that, man, we have just been overeating here or there, or not actually looking at the entire scope, or that 1 week of damage, we try to give ourselves permission, actually equated to a balance over the course of the month. And that's just reality for most of us. So that's why having a coach, having accountability can go a really long way. So if you need that, reach out. But that does it for today's episode, you guys. So thank you so much for listening. As always, be sure to snap a picture, screenshot, tag me on Instagram, joseph.hawthorne, or anywhere. And that way I know that you're loving the content from this specific episode, and I can do more that are like this. But got some great guests coming up, and we'll be talking to you guys soon.